On a quiet Saturday in July 2023, a family gathered for lunch in the small Australian town of Leongatha. The meal was meant to be an olive branch, a chance to heal strained relationships. But within days, 3 guests would be dead. Only one would survive. And at the center of this chilling case stood the woman who cooked the meal, Erin Patterson. This is the story of the mushroom murders. Erin Patterson was a 49-year-old mother living in rural Victoria. She had recently separated from her husband, Simon Patterson, but maintained contact with his family. Simon's parents, Don and Gail Patterson, were respected members of their community. Their friends, Heather and Ian Wilkinson, were longtime family acquaintances. Despite tension following the marriage breakdown, Erin invited them all for lunch on July 29, 2023. On the menu, a classic Beef Wellington. It was supposed to be a gesture of peace, a way to mend broken family ties. But no one could have imagined that this gathering would spiral into one of Australia's most notorious true crime cases. The 4 guests arrived that afternoon, enjoying conversation and what seemed to be a hearty homemade dish. Erin herself claimed she ate part of the meal too. But by the next morning, everything had changed. All 4 guests began to suffer from violent stomach pains, nausea, and diarrhea. Within hours, they were admitted to hospital. Doctors quickly realized the symptoms were not typical food poisoning. The victims were showing signs of severe liver failure, a classic indicator of death cap mushroom poisoning, one of the most lethal toxins in the natural world. Just 1 cap of this mushroom can kill a healthy adult. Within days, the tragedy deepened. Heather Wilkinson, age 66, was the first to pass away. Soon after, Gail Patterson, 70, followed. Then Gail's husband, Don Patterson, 70, succumbed to the same fate. Only Ian Wilkinson, Heather's husband, survived, but barely. He spent weeks in critical care, enduring a liver transplant before slowly beginning to recover. The common thread? They had all eaten Erin's Beef Wellington. Erin herself, however, was completely unharmed. As news broke, the case stunned Australia. How had poisonous mushrooms ended up in a family meal? Erin gave conflicting statements to police and reporters. At first, she insisted the mushrooms were store-bought, purchased at a local supermarket. Later, she admitted that she had mixed in some mushrooms from an Asian grocery store, possibly without knowing their danger. But suspicion grew when investigators learned about Erin's estranged husband Simon. He had not attended the lunch, but there were troubling details about his past. Simon had been hospitalized on several occasions in the years before, suffering mysterious gastrointestinal illnesses. Some family members began to wonder, was this really just a tragic accident? Or had Erin been experimenting with poison for far longer than anyone realized? One of the most damning pieces of evidence came from Erin's own property. Investigators discovered that she had owned a food dehydrator, a device capable of drying mushrooms. When questioned about it, Erin admitted she had thrown it away after the lunch, fearing it might have been contaminated. To detectives, this looked less like panic and more like evidence destruction. Why would someone dispose of key cooking equipment right after a deadly meal? The media dubbed the case the Mushroom Murders. The story spread far beyond Australia, capturing international attention. The quiet town of Leongatha was flooded with reporters. Neighbors described Erin as quiet but distant. Social media erupted with theories. Was this deliberate murder? A revenge plot? A cover-up gone wrong? Or simply an unimaginable accident? Meanwhile, Erin's every move was scrutinized. Her interviews, her tears, even her facial expressions. The nation waited as police built their case. On November 2nd, 2023, Erin Patterson was formally arrested. She was charged with 3 counts of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder, the latter linked not only to Ian Wilkinson, but also to her estranged husband Simon, tied to those earlier mysterious illnesses. For Erin, the world collapsed overnight. She faced the possibility of spending the rest of her life in prison. But for the families of Dawn, Gail, and Heather, the charges were the first step toward justice. As Erin awaited trial, the nation braced for answers. Was she a grieving mother caught in a nightmare of circumstance, or a cold-blooded killer who weaponized one of nature's deadliest poisons? We'll follow the courtroom drama, the shocking testimony, and the verdict that would divide public opinion. In the next few minutes, we saw how a simple family lunch turned into a nightmare, leaving 3 people dead and 1 fighting for his life. Erin Patterson, the host of that fateful meal, stood accused of orchestrating the deadly poisonings. Now we follow the trial that would expose chilling details and the verdict that sealed her fate. April 2025, the Victorian Supreme Court. Erin Patterson, now 51, faced a jury of her peers. The prosecution painted her as manipulative, deceptive, and calculated. They argued that Erin had deliberately laced the Beef Wellington with death cap mushrooms, carefully ensuring that only her guests consumed the poison portions. Prosecutors highlighted how Erin had eaten from a different colored plate, raising suspicions that she avoided the lethal dose herself. The case against Erin was built on several key pillars. Medical testimony. Experts confirmed the symptoms and deaths matched classic death cap poisoning. Behavior after the lunch. Erin admitted disposing of the dehydrator, which prosecutors called a deliberate attempt to cover her tracks. Past pattern. Simon Patterson's prior unexplained hospitalizations suggested earlier poisoning attempts. Together, these elements painted Erin not as careless, but as calculating. The defense, however, fought back hard. They insisted the poisonings were a tragic accident. Erin, they said, had no reason to murder her former in-laws. Her lawyers argued she had purchased mushrooms in good faith, unknowingly mixing poisonous fungi into the meal. They pointed out that Erin herself had also consumed part of the dish, suggesting she could not have intended to kill. But prosecutors countered. Erin's minimal symptoms compared to the victims suggested she had carefully avoided the poisoned servings. The trial was emotional. Family members wept as graphic medical details were read aloud. Survivors spoke about their devastating losses. Meanwhile, Erin sat quietly, sometimes crying, sometimes staring blankly ahead. She maintained her innocence, insisting she never meant to hurt anyone. But the jury had to weigh her words against a mountain of circumstantial evidence. In July 2025, after weeks of testimony and days of deliberation, the jury returned its decision: guilty. Erin Patterson was convicted of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The other charges, related to Simon's illnesses, were dropped for lack of direct proof. 2 months later, on September 8, 2025, Erin was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 33 years before parole. She will be in her 80s before ever walking free again. Despite the verdict, questions remain. The motive: why would Erin kill? Was it revenge against her estranged husband's family? Financial gain? Or something darker? The mushroom's origin. Erin's explanation about buying them remains disputed. Did she forge them herself? Or deliberately acquire death caps, knowing their toxicity? Past poisonings. Was Simon Patterson truly a prior target, or were his illnesses unrelated coincidences? The dropped charges leave this mystery unsolved. Even today, the full truth may never be known. The mushroom murder shocked not just Australia, but the world. A dish meant to bring people together became the weapon that tore a family apart. 3 lives lost, 1 man scarred forever, and a woman condemned as the mushroom murderer. The case is a haunting reminder. Sometimes the deadliest threats hide not in dark alleys or violent attacks, but in the food on our very plates. Subscribe to this channel to get the continuation on the final verdict. Please drop a comment to share your thought with us concerning this case.